1920, an 11-year-old boy built a stand to sell Pepsi out of it. He enjoyed selling so much, he dropped out of school for it. He grew up to be a great salesman and eventually worked for large companies. But when the Great Depression hit, he was laid off. Jobless, he was forced to sell potato chips from his car. He would sell them at the grocery stores, gas stations, schools, and hospitals. Anything to survive. At the time, chips could only be sold locally. They were in paper bags and would go stale in no time. But the boy was not a great salesman. He was a brilliant businessman. He discovered a solution that would revolutionize the chip industry. The boy's name was Herman Lay, and his genius idea would lead him into founding Lay's, the chips we all know today. This is the story of a boy who went from selling chips out of his car to selling chips all over the world. When he was only 11, he started selling Pepsi-Cola from a homemade stand in his family's front yard. Herman charged only 5 cents while the baseball park across the street cost 10 cents. His stand was so successful that he managed to hire other kids to work for him while he delivered newspapers. After graduating from high school, Herman attended Furman University on an athletic scholarship, but after 2 years he decided to drop out to work instead. First, Herman and a friend invested $100 each to sell ice cream along a paved route. Unfortunately, the route changed at the last minute, and two were left with nothing but melting ice cream. Afterward, Herman worked a number of odd jobs before snagging a salesman position for the Sunshine Biscuit Company. At the time, Sunshine Biscuit was one of the biggest cookie makers in the United States and already known for inventing the precursor to Oreo's Hot Dogs. Herman was sure to make good money, but his time at Sunshine Biscuit was cut short. When the Great Depression hit, Herman was laid off. Desperate to find a new job, Herman searched through newspapers' ads for work and wrote to hundreds of employers. After his 200th letter, Herman finally received an offer, but was more disappointed than excited. The offer was a position as truck driver for Barrett Snack Food Company. At the time, the salty snack business barely existed. Companies like Barrett offered few products like potato chips and were struggling to make sales. Meanwhile, the candy business was thriving. Many Americans were looking for cheap meals to feed their families and relied on bars like Chicken Dinner and Meal for Your Mouth. Herman didn't believe there was not a future in potato chips and would have preferred to be a salesman than a truck driver. He hesitated to accept Barrett's offer, and by the time he did, it was too late. The position was filled. Fortunately, Barrett offered Herman a position as an extra salesman instead. From his car, Herman would sell potato chips to grocery stores, road stands, gas stations, and anywhere else he could think of. Later that year, Herman managed to borrow $100 to start his own distribution company and take over a small warehouse. He finally got his first step up in the business. He also continued to work with Barrett and was given his own territory. Herman didn't know it at the time, but remaining a business associate would later lead to a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. With his own company, Herman would spend all day selling potato chips, sleep in whatever town he ended up in, and then start over again the next morning. His new sense of freedom pushed him to work hard. By the end of the year, his company managed to expand its territory and increase profits. And just 3 years later, it was able to hire over 30 employees and produce its own snack foods. Herman's hard work had already paid off. From then on, business was seemingly going well, up until a tragic event ended Herman's relationship with Barrett. Barrett's founder passed away and the founder's family wanted to sell it off. In search of a suitable owner, the family looked to their business associates and reached out to Herman. They offered to sell the company to him for $60,000, the amount of 12 times Herman's life savings. He wanted to take on what was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so he asked dozens of people for help but had no luck. Not wanting to pass up the opportunity, Herman took on a risk that could have crippled him for years, taking out a $30,000 bank loan. Afterward, he convinced Barrett to accept what he had and take the difference in the stock. Luckily, Barrett agreed and Herman renamed the company to H.W. Lay. To pay off his debt, Herman decided to try and find a way to sell potato chips nationally. It had yet to be done by any company since it was difficult to preserve and ship potato chips. At the time, potato chips were simply dipped out of a barrel, placed in paper bags, and sealed with paper clips, which made them prone to becoming soggy, stale, or spoiled. Fortunately, it was not long until Herman discovered advanced solutions to preserve and ship potato chips. First, Herman leveraged a technology used to preserve photographs and stamps to create a special bag and seal, glassine. Glassine was not only resistant to moisture, dust, and grease, but helped keep potato chips stay fresh longer. Later, Herman developed a machine to automate the process of packaging multiple potato chip bags at once. To succeed in selling potato chips nationally, Herman and his team traveled to different regions and observed dozens of convenience stores, grocery stores, and supermarkets. However, Herman would soon learn there are some things you cannot prepare for. America entered the Second World War, and Lay's was forced to shut down. To conserve resources for the war effort, the US government banned factories from producing items that they classified as non-essential. Among the nearly 300-item list was potato chips. Herman was taken aback. He believed potato chips should be classified as essential since they are resistant to spoilage and didn't require refrigeration or cooking. And for these reasons, Americans could rely on potato chips as a readily available source of energy if there was a bombing or blackout during the war. Determined to convince Congress, Herman reached out to food industry lobbyists to plead his case. Several months later, Herman finally received news that potato chips would be reclassified as an essential item, saving not only Lay's but the entire potato chip industry. By the time the war ended, Lay's became the second largest food company in the United States. One day, Herman discovered that Charles wanted to open a Frito factory in Lay's territory. Instead of finding a way to bar him, he invited him to meet and suggested they find a way to work together. Charles agreed to the idea and the two drew up an agreement. Under the terms, Lay's was granted the rights to become an exclusive manufacturer and distributor of Frito products in the East, and both companies were free to sell their products in the same stores. Lay's sales soared to $16 million and Frito's to $26 million. Herman and Charles managed to grow Lay's and Frito rapidly. Thanks to their mutually beneficial agreement. However, as the years went by, Herman found that there was little room left to grow since his agreement with Charles barred him for expanding into the Southwest. Herman decided to introduce a new product to increase sales while respecting the agreement at the time. America and an economic boom, and people had money to spend. This led to them wanting to buy more varied products, especially since they were limited during the war. Many companies jumped on the demand by introducing new products with different flavors, colors, and textures. Sensing a huge opportunity, Herman played with different chip seasonings. He and his team came up with a mix of paprika, tomato, garlic, and mustard seed oil, resulting in a taste that was similar to barbecue. Herman decided to take a chance on the seasoning and use it to launch Lay's first flavored potato chips. Fortunately, they were an instant hit given barbecue was already a popular flavor amongst Americans and allowed Lay's to expand to 30 states. Meanwhile, Frito's sales soared even higher than before, an over 70% increase when compared to nearly 2 decades before. However, it soon faced the tragedy that all the money in the world couldn't save. Charles suddenly passed away from a stroke and heart attack at age 56. By this time, Frito and Lay's had a very close working relationship. Herman suggested to Frito executives that they merge companies. The Frito executives agreed. The joint company was renamed Frito-Lay and Herman was appointed CEO. Herman's first order of business was to finally sell Lay's nationally. At this time, television was the latest technology. Herman decided to make use of it rather than rely on traditional advertising. More than half of US households began to own a TV, and there were only a couple of networks available, resulting in many Americans paying attention to the same things. Within the same year, Frito-Lay's sales exceed $180 million, and finally Herman achieved his goal of selling Lay's nationally. As Lay's became a household name, the company struggled to keep up with the demand for their products. Instead of pouring money into new factories, Herman reached out to one of the best-known brands in the country, Pepsi-Cola, and successfully negotiated a merger. Under the joint company, Frito-Lay remained independently operated and Herman was appointed as chairman. Now, Lay's not only had the resources to keep up with the demand for their products, but to expand worldwide. Within the first year of the merger, PepsiCo's revenue soared to over $600 million. From then on, the conglomerate continued to grow as Frito-Lay launched and acquired new products and expanded to over 200 countries. Today, Frito-Lay is one of the largest snack food companies in the world and dominates 65% of the market, with Lay's being listed as the best potato chip in the US. The company is also PepsiCo's most profitable division, accounting for half of its $12.2 million in sales. This is the story of how the founder of Lay's went from being an 11-year-old kid who sold Pepsi-Cola for 5 cents to being the CEO of a worldwide snack company worth over $16 billion. For more videos on major brands, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so that you don't miss an episode. Thank you.